Welcome into another episode of Tailgate Talk SEC. I am Will Thomas. Week 5 recap coming at you right now. Now, full transparency. If you didn't see it on Twitter, I was at a wedding this weekend, and it was a beautiful wedding. I'm so happy I was there. I just wish it was on a Friday, because man, I just had to box score surf so many of these games, and it was such good football. This was such a good week of college football. It's what makes the sport so great, especially in the SEC. So I don't want to dance around this. Let's just get right into it. We got the 2 cupcake games, and then we have got the meat and potatoes for how good this week was. So just those 2 cupcakes to get them out of the way. Utah State at Vanderbilt, 55-35 doors. 35 is a good bit of points to give to Utah State at home. But USU, they scored a lot of points this year. It's not out of their character to be able to put up into the 40s in a lot of their games, and I think part of this was a look-ahead spot for Vanderbilt. You know, they go to Tuscaloosa this weekend. Bama wants revenge for them last year, but now you got College Game Day in the building there. I mean, Vandy is ranked 5-0 on the road at Bama. Probably the biggest game, dare I say, ever in Vandy football history, but it's at least definitely up there. But Diego Pavia in this last game, he was 26 of 34 for 321 yards and 5 touchdowns through the air. Did throw a pick. They ran for 225 as a team. Really good day for Vanderbilt offensively, hanging 55 again. That defense, I mean, Utah State's a good offense. I think that if it was like a week 1 game surrounded by another cupcake, that wouldn't have happened. I think part of this was look ahead. I'm so excited for this game this week, man. Vandy at Bama. We'll preview that down the line a little bit. But the second and the last cupcake, only 2. UMass at Missouri. Missouri 42-6. They are just decapitating people. Still, Prabula was very sharp. He was 26 of 29 passing, threw for a touchdown. Hardy went for 130 and 3 touchdowns again. This guy is, I'm telling you, the best running back in the country. 268 rushing yards as a team, and their defense absolutely suffocated the inferior opponent like they should. They did allow 4 sacks. UMass got to the quarterback a little bit, which is not ideal, but don't nitpick at the negatives when you have a dominant win like Missouri had. That was the fastest cupcake segment I think we've ever had here. Just 2 games that I got to take just a few notes on. Let's get into the good stuff. I'll start with South Carolina and Kentucky. 35-13 Carolina. This was a best bet hit for us. 4 turnovers for Kentucky really is the story of the game. 2 picks and 2 fumbles. 4 turnovers in any game is hard to overcome. On the road, it makes it even harder. Sellers was efficient. He didn't necessarily have giant numbers that really blow you away on the box score, but he was 11 of 14 passing for 153 yards, and he had 14 carries for 81 yards on the ground. Vandrevius Jacobs was the only guy for Carolina with more than 1 catch. He had 5 catches for 108. Only 1 guy getting multiple catches is not ideal, but, you know, again, Carolina was more effective and efficient than they were explosive in this game, and if that's what works, I mean, they won the game by 22. You know, if you win a conference game by 3 scores, you have to be confident. Cutter Boley for Kentucky, he got beat around a bit in his SEC opener as their quarterback, 10 of 19 for 124 yards, threw 2 picks. Seth McGowan really was the only pulse for Kentucky on offense. He carried the ball 17 times for 112 yards and a score. Carolina needs to be able to take this momentum to help them turn it around and get hot in conference, because now they have a bye week and then they go to LSU. I don't like LSU at all now. You know, and we'll talk about LSU in a little bit, but that game could be winnable for Carolina. And if they're able to get hot, they won multiple games that they shouldn't have won last year, or at least that we thought they couldn't have won last year. If they start that earlier, they're still very much alive for a potential postseason spot if they're able to get hot here. And for Kentucky, they get to go to Athens. So this is a prayer. This is, can Jesus please be with our Wildcat brethren, because, I mean, Georgia's going to come out hot after that loss to Bama this past week. Kentucky, I don't like at all, period. So Georgia is going to dominate that game, I think. But really for Carolina in this one, I was happy to see that they really kind of controlled that game. Their defense played very, very well, forcing 4 turnovers. If you can really see them start to get into a flow, start turning around, they can get hot like they did at the end of last year. Notre Dame and Arkansas, this was the most disappointing game of the weekend for me, because, I mean, I had Arkansas on my best bets just to cover that number. I thought it was going to be close to nothing else. 56-13 Notre Dame. We know that Sam Pittman got fired on Sunday after this game. Really good day for C.J. Carr. 22 of 30 passing for 354 and 4 touchdowns. The team had 212 yards on the ground. They finally had their wideouts really explode in the passing game. The Irish did. Faison had 7 catches for 89 yards, and Malachi had 3 catches for 72. It was no more, it was no longer a tight end really being their biggest passing threat. They got those receivers involved, which was a big plus for them. They outgained Arkansas by almost 300, and 13.5 yards per pass definitely helps with that when your offense is clicking that well. Taylor Green, I talked about how he really needed to be sharp passing the ball and keep the ball out of harm's way. only 17 of 32 passing for 207, did throw a pick, 10 rushes for 81 yards on the ground. I mean, that whole offense really never got going. It was disappointing effort overall, and Pittman getting fired, I mean, he was really liked in that building, so it's kind of sad to see him go, but, I don't even know if I can necessarily define what the standard is for Arkansas, for what that program is, like how many wins do you need to be getting, but it's not a stretch to say that Pittman wasn't quite there, and I do also think this might have been a strategic move by Arkansas to wait until at least 5 games have passed. Because now, with the portal rule, coaches get fired, your players, they can no longer redshirt this year and just reset somewhere else. So now they're much less incentivized to quit on this year alone or just leave, right? Because if Arkansas makes a good hire, whether it be Petrino full-time or they go out and get somebody, you have a better chance of keeping that roster intact. And that roster is pretty good. I don't hate that roster, at least certain pieces of it at all. So I think Arkansas, obviously they're going to have to rebuild now without Pittman. New coaching search, we'll see who that is. But just in the context of this game, really disappointing showing for Arkansas, especially at home. One of your biggest games of the year. Just a letdown. Just a pretty big letdown for the Hogs. Auburn, Texas A&M. One of my best bets was the over in this game, and then the teams combined for 26. A&M won 16-10. Really couldn't have been a worse read by me. Hand up. That's all me. Jackson Arnold, man, I thought he'd have a pulse. I really did. I thought that this offense for Auburn would come out with a pretty inspiring performance after the letdown against Oklahoma last week, and an A&M defense that I don't think is that good. But he was only 18 of 33 passing for 125 yards, 52 rush yards as a team. Now, you do have to give credit to A&M's defense, right? Because Auburn is not a bad offensive unit to the point where that is expected. A&M's defense played very well, but it was also a bad showing from Auburn. It was a bit of both. Marshall Reed played well, 15 of 22 passing for 207 yards and a pick. Le'Veon Moss and Casey Concepcion really ran that game. Moss ran the ball 21 times for 139 yards and a touchdown. Casey had 7 catches for 113. The yards per pass in this game, it was 3.8 for Auburn, 9.4 for A&M. A&M had 414 total yards. Auburn had 177. The Tigers were 0 of 13 on third down, had 2.2 yards per rush. Just nothing worked. Nothing worked for Auburn, and it was disappointing to just look uninspired. It really was, because I still think that this Auburn team can win some games. In fact, in my preseason prediction for them, I had them losing to Oklahoma, losing this A&M game, and then losing to Georgia, which they have in 2 weeks after this bye. So I had this predicted. I still have them winning 9 games, but if they had come out and lost this game 24-20 to 24-30, it's still a loss, but you feel better about it. This was a pretty uninspiring performance from Auburn, and the impatience seems like it's kind of going to start rearing its head again because of how dry they looked. They do get a bye week. Like I just said, they get a bye week, and then Georgia comes to their house. Georgia looks gettable because they got this past week against Alabama at home. So that's a big spot for Auburn. I think in the end, I'll still pick Georgia in that game. We'll see how I feel in 10 days, but it's a big spot for Auburn. Hugh Freeze is trying to turn this around and really get some momentum back that they had early in the season. So we'll see how that goes for the Tigers. What do I got left? I'll go Tennessee and Mississippi State. This was probably the best game, most exciting game of the weekend. Auburn, Georgia, I'll give best game, but 41-34 Vols. This was just an electric shootout. Aguilar's stat line, it looked exactly like kind of what I thought it would, where he threw for 335. He had a good day in the air. Also had 2 picks. But that's just the Joey Aguilar experience, right? He's going to produce for you, but he's also going to throw some away. And that's what you're willing to live with if you have him at quarterback. And for Tennessee, it's been working, right? Because you scored 40 against Georgia, it was a loss. You scored 40 here, got the win. So, I mean, if it works, it works. He got Mike Matthews and Chris Brazzell, who to both break 100 yards receiving. Blake Shapen only threw 1 pick to Aguilar's 2, but Shapen's pick got brought back to the house, which is obviously a big difference than just throwing one down on the opposing 30. 180 yards in the air and a touchdown for Shapen. Fluff Bothwell did all he could for State. He ran the ball 23 times for 134 yards and 2 scores. No receiver for Mississippi State reached 50 yards, which is just not ideal. That passing offense had been more explosive, and against the Tennessee secondary that was kind of beat up. I was expecting it to be a little more explosive, but they didn't quite have that. Really just wasn't a league game that I had to follow through, just ESPN app updates because of the wedding I was at. But one of my questions about this game, Tennessee won. Credit to them. It was a good win. At the end of regulation, I didn't like how they coached that game because when there were like 4 seconds left, I think, and they threw the Hail Mary, but they had their receivers. There was nobody on them. Like, State was in full Hail Mary defense, and Tennessee had a timeout. I don't think I'm too off base in saying you can get 8 yards in 3 seconds and burn a timeout. Because if you just snap the ball, you tell whoever was on top, I think it was Brazel, to just run, catch, step, and drop. You can get a timeout and then probably have a field goal from there. I didn't think that they had to settle for a Hail Mary to avoid overtime. I thought they had time to get a few more yards to make a makeable field goal attempt possible. But obviously, like I said for Missouri, don't nitpick at bad things in what is a good win. And for Tennessee here on the road against a state team that is surpassing expectations to this point. And it was a good one for the Vols to avoid going 0-2 in conference. Because if you go 0-2 in the SEC, it doesn't really matter how good you are. Your margin for error is gone. And for the Vols, they have higher aspirations than losing their margin of error in September. So this is a pretty big win for them. And for State, they showed that they can compete week to week in the conference. I don't think they can compete for the conference, but I think any given Saturday, you have to pay attention to them. You really do, because this team is dangerous, and they can be dangerous. Tennessee in overtime, you're 1 or 2 plays away from getting that win and going to 5-0 for Mississippi State. So they're right there. I do think they can really compete any given week. So I'm still pretty excited about Mississippi State for the rest of the year. LSU at Ole Miss, 24-19 Ole Miss, much lower scoring than I think really everybody thought it was going to be. Story of the game here, 28-16 first down differential for Ole Miss. Rebels were 8 of 16 on third down. LSU was 2 of 11. Ole Miss outgained LSU by 230 yards, 8.1 yards per pass for Chambliss, 5.8 for Nussmeier, 2.8 yards per rush for LSU. What are we do? Ole Miss's run defense is bad. It's not a strong unit at all. So for LSU to still be unable to run the ball really at all is very, very telling. And I think the box score really does kind of tell the story in this situation. Almost really beat up on them. And for LSU on the defensive side, they couldn't really deal with Chambliss. He threw for 314 yards and a score, ran the ball 14 times for 71, and Kawan Lacey really was able to chip away at him, ran the ball 23 times for 87 yards, so not like a big explosive guy, but he was just grinding away, put his head down, get as many yards as you need on any given play. And if you give up 24 to Ole Miss in Oxford, that should be a good enough defensive showing to win you a game, especially for LSU with how much talent they have on offense. But Nussmeier, it's officially question time. He was 21 of 34, 197 yards and 1 score with a pick. In his defense, if there's anything to defend him, right, the running game is bad. And if you don't have a running game, it's harder to be an effective passer just because there's no threat of you handing the ball off and getting a chunk play. But, man, I don't know if it's just this injury that's maybe lingering with him or if LSU's offense is just broken. Because I had thought for a while that it was just a slow start, because Clemson's defense is good to solid. Florida's defense is good. LSU had played some good defenses to where I thought maybe they were just still getting their footing. Some new faces, get used to it. Now I think it's broken. Now I think something's really, really wrong. So LSU, they need to find something fast or they're going to keep dropping games that they really shouldn't. And granted, it's been 1 loss. Right, I'm not trying to be all doom and gloom, but it wasn't a very promising showing. Same as Auburn, right? If they just score 10 more points in this game, but to lose by 5, it's a different story. But with how slow they looked, it's hard to be super optimistic about LSU on the offensive side of the ball for the rest of the year. And just for Ole Miss, they get a bye and then Washington State at home before they play Georgia. So they'll be 6-0 when they get Georgia. Ole Miss can get hot. And if Georgia looks gettable, if they go 7-0 there, then I think they have Oklahoma after that. I think that's what it is. But Ole Miss's schedule, it's tough. It's not impossible. Ole Miss could rattle off some big-time wins with how good Chambliss has them looking. And if their defense is able to step up and maybe try and keep developing, Ole Miss can be really dangerous. Really dangerous. And the final game that we'll recap, the final game that happened, Alabama at Georgia, 24-21 in favor of Bama. I read this game with a similar score. I had Georgia winning, so they were able to flip me on that. I thought Georgia were able to really lean on Bama running the ball, which was kind of correct. They ran the ball 33 times as a team for 227 yards, just about 7 yards per carry. But I thought their defense would be able to limit Bama's passing game more, which was wrong. Bama's offense looked really good. And Georgia's defense is leaving a lot to be desired. And a lot of that is to the fault of Georgia's defenses of the past, because we're holding them to such a high standard now that when they maybe have a few holes, it's like, what in the world is going on? But Ty Simpson just looks good. He was 24 of 38 passing the ball, 276 through the air with 2 touchdowns. Jay Miller was just okay in his return, which I think made sense. 16 carries for 46 yards. And, man, drops are just destroying Georgia again. I forget who it was because I just saw a highlight on a tweet while I was dancing at the wedding. But just a wide-open go-ahead touchdown in the third quarter. Like, it was a perfect ball from Stockton, too. You just have to be able to make the fundamental catches that put you in spots like that to go ahead at home in the second half against an Alabama team. And just for Georgia, this Bama monkey on their back, it just won't get off. And I think that more speaks to Alabama still being such a good power in this conference. But even more so now, like, there's no great team. There's no great team because Georgia was that great team for the past few years, but in the past 2 or 3, we've seen that kind of come back down to earth. And every team is sort of well balanced, which is almost why I think this wasn't necessarily a battle of the Titans. It was a battle of 2 really good teams, but it's not like these were 2 elite teams going at it. It was 2 evenly matched teams who I do believe are near the top of the SEC, but with how even the conference is, how much talent is everywhere, the parity in the league, like, it just changes everything. It changes good versus good. It changes bad versus bad matchups. And I think that's really good for the sport. But just overall, really good win for Bama. They have now finally proven officially they are not at all dead. Despite that week 1 showing at FSU, Bama is still a player in the SEC and to make the playoff. Georgia, I think, is totally okay. I'm not worried about Georgia long-term at all. I think that Kirby's able to use this loss as motivation. I do think Georgia still makes the playoff. Can still make a run in Atlanta. Maybe we get this game, round 2, in Atlanta for the SEC title game. Both these teams are pretty good. And I think that if Bama is able to keep getting Caden Proctor involved in the passing game, they'll be very dangerous. But, I mean, this is a great game. Really close game. You couldn't ask for much more. And Bama came out on top. Quicker recap episode, mainly because I didn't get to watch the games. So I don't have as much of an informed opinion as I normally do. But thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of Tailgate Talk SEC. We'll be coming at you with preview content for Week 6 throughout the week. And I will see you guys again next time.